Today I'm going over an article I saw earlier today that the Republican campaign arm canceled more than $700,000 in advertising for the Ohio Senate race in November. And I saw this advertising and I just feel like it was something I really want to talk about because it shows something very interesting and something that could have potential ramifications for which party controls the Senate coming to November. So, according to Ad Impact Ad Impact Politics, I believe on X, the NRSC, which is the National Republican Senate Committee, canceled its full cable reservation in one of the most competitive races in the country for ads, which were set to run between August 31st and Election Day. So this isn't like recently. This is like ads in the final days of the campaign that were going to run in the state of Ohio on behalf of Republican candidate challenger Bernie Moreno against Democratic incumbent Senator Sherrod. And now these ads are being canceled as of now. And so about $707,000 worth of cable reservations to put the TV advertisements there have been pulled out of this race. And of course things could always change, but as of now the NRSC is no future TV reservations in Ohio. And so I just want to go over this article a little more because I think it does a very good job of kind of explaining this, and then I'll get into the ramifications for the Senate after that. The campaign committee had already been relying on support from allied super PACs to continue to pour money into the race. The Senate Leadership Fund, the largest allied super PAC, and affiliated subsidiaries have already rolled out millions in ad buys in battleground states across the country. And according to this spokesperson for the NRSC, these dollars can be spent more efficiently via hybrid advertisements, and which get the candidate rate. And the NRSC is relying on SLF and other outside groups to carry the super PAC message in Ohio and Montana, two of the top targets for Republicans in these upcoming elections for Senate pickups. And the Senate campaign arm has emphasized Ohio is still a very top pickup opportunity for them, saying, quote, Kamala Harris and Joe Biden historical unpopularity in Ohio means advertising dollars can be spent more efficiently as hybrid ads, they wrote in a post on X. Ohio remains a top pickup opportunity for Senate Republicans, and NRSC will continue to invest accordingly. And because, just to go back up where it was, a quick what it looks like right now in future Ohio Senate TV reservations, Democrats now have $86.2 million spent, Republicans have 83.3, so Democrats are now leading Republicans in that. Prior to this cancellation, they were not. So that's what that means really quick. And this goes right here, this kind of explains a little bit, where the NRC had taken a similar approach in Montana, where outside PACs had already booked the airtime. In Pennsylvania, the Keystone Renewal PAC had booked millions of dollars for ads for GOP candidate Dave McCormick, and another super PAC is planning to spend for Larry Hogan in Maryland in that Senate race as well. Also, an interesting note that the Ohio race has become 2021's first non-presidential race to exceed $300 million in spending. It's also one of the most expensive races that the political ad tracking firm has seen. Yeah, $300 million for a Senate race is absolutely insane, and definitely the highest numbers, or one of the highest numbers we've ever seen in the history of campaigning and politics. And before the NRSC pulled their advertising spending, Ohio was the only state in which Republicans had been outspending Democrats on campaign ads, where they were slated to spend $158.4 million compared to $152 million from Democrats. However, now Democrats have spent more on future advertising slated in the state, with $86.2 million in the future ads to Republicans' $83.3. That's what I was saying about Democrats now leaning over Republicans in that. It's also an important note that Sherrod is the incumbent senator. He is polling better than his Republican challenger, while former President Donald Trump has a much larger lead in the state. In an average of polling, Brown is outpacing Moreno by 5 points. And I'll be going to that in a second as well. So that's pretty much it for the article that I wanted to cover. And, it's very interesting because, look, Ohio is one of the top chances Republicans have at trying to flip the Senate to the Republican side. And it's not so that it can't be done, but these numbers I'm about to show you are a little bit worrying. Because right now in the Ohio Senate Brown currently has 46.8% to Moreno's 41.8%, a 5-point lead for Sherrod Brown over Bernie Moreno. And if you're a Republican, you want to see the seat go red, why is this a concern? Well, for one thing, we know for a fact Donald Trump is going to win the state of Ohio in November in the presidential election and probably win it by a pretty decent margin, at least 10 points, maybe a little bit over. To see a Democrat winning on the same ticket as Trump and leading in the polls right now by 5 points, that's definitely not a good sign. Which I'm not saying it is, but I'm saying it's possible that could be a reason why the NRSC might have pulled some of their ads from Ohio at this time. Maybe they feel they're not going to say it publicly and say we're giving up on it. They're going to say, of course, we're going to fight hard for every single Senate race, but behind closed doors, maybe thinking, okay, maybe we have a better shot at winning Montana. Let's make sure we win that one than waste money in a state like Ohio. I'm not saying that's what they're doing, but that was my first initial instinct or thought was, do they see something in the internal polling that shows maybe this won't go the way they want? And look, in all fairness to Moreno, like some of the other races I've covered, it's 46.8% to 41.8%. There's a lot of undecided vote, third-party vote left, that in a state like Ohio will probably favor the Republican on Election Day. So it's possible that if Brown stays around at 46.8%, Moreno will win this. Well, he will win this race. The only problem is I don't know if that's necessarily super likely. Because go back to Sherrod Brown's last election, he got 53.4% to Jim Renassi, the Republican challenger's 46.6%. This was back in 2018, so this is a strong Democratic year, the first midterm election since Donald Trump was president, so Democrats are certainly favored. And, you know, it looked more like, to be honest, a Ohio election from, say, Obama in 2012 than from Trump in 2020. This is Ohio kind of reverting back to its swing state DNA when Sherrod Brown was on the ticket in 2018. 2024 is going to be a different election than 2018. Trump's going to win it. So I don't imagine Sherrod Brown, even if he does win this race, is going to have these margins. But, I mean, just look at some of the numbers of these smaller counties out here. Mahoning County, 39.5. Trumbull, 57.9, 42.1. Ashtabula, 51.1, 48.9. These are three counties that either President Trump won in 2020 or at very least came very close. Portage County, similar. Sherrod Brown, I think, honestly, being probably the best Democrat in the state of Ohio when it comes to getting elected, especially left now. Lake County, this is definitely a Trump county that Trump would win in 2020 and probably will win in 2024. And you look at Lorain County, Erie County. These are places that either Trump will win or perform much better in. Sherrod Brown was able to do very well in 2018. And it's going to be an interesting conversation of, can Bernie Moreno make up that 5-point deficit that I showed you? Because he's down by 5 points right now. And the big concern, even though there hasn't been too many recent polls, only one from the month of July, that had a 4-point race, 46-42. So it's close. It's within the margin of error on that one. But it's been consistently about a 4 to 5, 6 point lead for Brown over Moreno. And I think if you're a Republican super PAC and you're going to put a ton of money into a race, you would probably feel better giving money into a race that wasn't the challenger down by 5. And this is what I mean. Let's go to Montana really quick. The Republican challenger, Tim Sheehy, is leading the Democratic incumbent, Jon Tester, by 3.5 points. If you're going to just be pragmatic here, if you're going to give a bunch of money to a Republican challenger, you want him to win. You don't want to just throw your money away. You want to pick the candidate you think is going to win. And right now, Tim Sheehy is the best Republican challenger that has a chance of winning. He has 3.5 points. So you're probably going to give more money to him over a state like Ohio, where Moreno right now is down by 5 points. Now, if a few polls come out showing Moreno is up at like 44-44, or the race gets a 1 or 2 point race, things can change very quickly. But again, look at this margin. 5 points for Brown, right? Let's check out Nevada. Rosen over Sam Brown. She's got a 4-point lead over Sam Brown. So the Democratic incumbent is still leading in Nevada, but it's a smaller margin by 1 point. And maybe you're looking at 50 or 45-42. There's more of a there's still a very similar undecided vote left in these races, but Brown is 1 point closer. Maybe he's got a better shot at an upset. I'm not saying this is true. I'm saying this could be the mindset of potentially some Republican donors. Let's go to Michigan. 5.4 points, Slotkin currently over Mike Rogers, the Republican. Similar, though, to Ohio. A lot of undecided vote, it seems. Could be a margin to be made up, depending on how Trump does on the top of the ticket. Maybe Rogers could pull upset in Michigan. Who's to say? But right now, Ohio looks more like the Michigan Senate race based on the polls than it looks like the Montana one, which could be giving some Washington Republicans a little bit of angst when it comes to which race they want to pour a lot of money into. Now let's go to the state of Arizona. This is a race that I think is going to be very close. Ruben Gallego, the Democrat, Kari Lake, the Republican. Gallego's up 3.4 points. This is a race that actually had a bigger lead for Gallego a few weeks ago and even a month ago, and Lake has got it down to 3.4 points. Gallego is still favored to win this race right now, and I'd probably have him lean D in my latest prediction, but at very least, it's a 3-point race. This is close. It's within the margin of error of most races. If you're a Republican pollster, wouldn't you rather donate money to a race that's a 3-point margin of error versus one where the Democratic incumbent's being the challenger by 5 points? So I think for Moreno to get some of that money back, he needs to show in a few polls that he can actually win the race. Because of all the races I've shown you in this video, aside from maybe Michigan, he's the least likely to win of all of them. And it's crazy to say that because you would think, oh, of course, Ohio. It's a state that's voted very red since President Trump ran in 2016. Of course Ohio's going to go red. And Moreno could still win on Election Day, which he absolutely could. Moreno still could win that Senate race. But none of the polling right now shows he's going to. At least non-similar numbers that these other races I've shown you are. Last, I'm just going to go to Pennsylvania where, look, I think it says something that Dave McCormick is still getting pretty decent fundraising numbers, despite the fact he's down by 7 points. I mean, as we know, if you've watched some of my videos in the past about the Senate race, I've mentioned Bob Casey is going to win this seat. You know, I believe his father was a politician in Pennsylvania, very popular family name. In Pennsylvania politics, he's like an electoral juggernaut. He's going to win this race. But I think if Dave McCormick puts up a good enough fight, that could trickle down into maybe a future run for governor or maybe a Senate run against Fetterman when he's up in, I believe, in 4 more years. Maybe that can translate into that. But I would bet more on McCormick running for governor at some point if he overperforms against Casey. But, I mean, look, 7-point race, and he's still getting numbers. Moreno's down by 5, and he's not being able to get numbers. That's got to be a little bit concerning. And lastly, just finishing off with Texas, this one won't get talked about too much because Senator Ted Cruz is an incumbent, but he's up in the polls by 7.6%. Again, if you're going to give money to a race and you want to win, maybe you should make sure that you don't lose any seats. Maybe give a few bucks to a Republican senator up in... Texas isn't like a swing state yet, but it's at very least a likely Republican state. So maybe when you want to make sure it doesn't go the way of the Democrats, and you want to make sure this race stays red. So when you look at the Senate map right now, and this is on Real Clear Politics, if you want to check out, it says the polling for every state. Republicans at 50, Democrats at 43. Thanks to Joe Manchin retiring, Republicans are pretty much guaranteed to get 50, barring an upset in Texas. All Republicans need to do is win one of the 7 toss-up races to get the Senate majority. And of all the ones I showed you, next to Michigan, Ohio, and Pennsylvania, I guess, but next to Ohio, Wisconsin, Montana, Nevada, and Arizona, the polls are looking kind of the bleakest in Ohio and Wisconsin, but maybe Ohio a little bit better. But, you know, Moreno's not running as good as Sheehy is in Montana against Tester, or Brown in Nevada, or Kari Lake in Arizona. And I think if he wants some of that advertising money back, he needs a good sign from some polls showing he can still win that race. Because right now, if this map stays the way it is and Republicans get the Senate majority, they're going to get it with Montana, with Tim Sheehy defeating John Tester. I don't know if they're going to be getting it in Ohio. If Ohio goes Republican on election night and goes Republican pretty early, that might be a bigger sign of Republicans are way outperforming, at least at the Senate level. But it's a very interesting article, one I wanted to go over, and definitely I think could have some implications for how the Senate is decided by in the 2024 election. So that'll do it for today's video. Thank you so much for watching. Please remember to give this video a like and click subscribe so you get notified when I post videos just like this one leading up all the way to Election Day. Thank you so much for watching. Hope to see you in a future video.